Welcome to Kaps podcast. Today we have a story of a young woman by the name of Kirsty. With us today we have two guests with us. Kirsty's mum, Sharon, and Lisa, her auntie. Also with us today is my co-presenter.
Welcome to Kaps podcast. Before we start, I just want to sort of share our condolences to your daughter and of course your niece as well.
So, from there, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourselves and Kirsty, please?
Yeah, Kirsty was 21 and she was pregnant with her second son when she was unfortunately murdered by her boyfriend in a frenzied attack. We didn't see it coming. There was no domestic violence ahead of what happened, so it was a shock for all of us. She had a 2-year-old son at the time, so it was a big shock, and we didn't see it coming. There was no signs to it, so what can you say really? That we didn't see it coming. It was a shock out of the blue. Not something I was going to wake up to one morning, to a phone call to say that it happened. It was a big shock. Big shock. There was no warning signs, So
at that time when it happened, where was you at that time?
I was up in Leeds. I'd gone to Leeds. We was running. I had a factory at the time. We was making shower trays. We'd gone up to Leeds for a business deal, and I was about 10 minutes away from home, and I had a phone call, and it come up no caller ID, which I don't usually answer, but for some reason that day I just answered it, and it was Worcestershire Police to say Kirsty had been admitted to hospital with multiple stab wounds. And then they informed me that they was taking her straight to Queen Elizabeth Major Trauma Centre. Unfortunately, I did arrive there before she did. So
you got from Leeds to the hospital?
I was about 10 minutes away from home, which was in Redditch, where we lived. And I'd been phoning her that morning to tell her, put the kettle on. I'm 10 minutes away, cup of tea when I get home. There was no answer. I phoned his phone as well, because she weren't answering. No answer from there. So didn't think nothing of it, just thought maybe they're still asleep. It was 9:30 in the morning, 9:45. So thinking, they're busy, doing something, whatever. About 10 minutes later, I've got a phone call. No caller ID, which, like I said, I don't usually answer, but I answered it that day. And it was Worcestershire Police to say Kirsty had been took by ambulance with multiple stab wounds, and they was taking her straight to Queen Elizabeth Hospital Major Trauma Centre. I was closer to the hospital than she must have been on the way, but unfortunately what we found out afterwards was the ambulance did have to stop multiple times to resuscitate her. So they have to pull up to do it, obviously, which delayed her getting to the hospital. So unfortunately I did get there before her. So I got there, and a few minutes later she was brought in, and I didn't know it was her because I didn't recognise her, even though they went past me with her. I didn't know it was her. So they come out and took me into the side room and basically told me she was took straight to surgery to try and save her life. They didn't give us a lot of details at the time. There was just, she was in surgery. I think we waited 8 hours.
It was 5 hours when
5 hours, and they come out and they said that they'd stabilised her. So we was like, right, she's stabilised, we've got you know,
A chance.
something's going on. We know they've stabilised her. A few hours later, we was left still a few hours. A few hours later, the major surgeons come out to see us that had seen to her when she come in, and said that she'd been took up into intensive care. So we made our way up to the family room in intensive care. So we was there for probably another hour, hour and a half.
You got to go in, didn't you?
And me and her dad, they come out and said, like, you can go and see her. So we was took in, and, well, looking at her, I knew, you know, that was it.
Yeah.
There was no coming back.
But we still clung on because we were
Yeah,
told
we did,
that,
because
oh,
they kept telling us that, you know, they'd stabilised her. We sort of held on to that hope.
they went through that she'll need like a lot of support after coming out of hospital. They mentioned like voice box and stuff because of her injuries, but there was like really hopeful that, you know, like once she gets home and gets all the support, we thought that.
That's what we was led to believe.
But then we went home, didn't we?
We went home that night about 10 o'clock after we'd all been in intensive care to see her. So we went home and I went back to my mum's house with Lisa, and about 1:45 in the morning the phone rung, because they said keep your phone on, you know, if there's any change in Kirsty's circumstances we'll let you know. And when I got back to my mum's, like, I knew that phone was going to ring. It's a mother's instinct, do you know what I mean? I said to Lisa, when they arrived at hospital, and this was 8 hours before anything was said, I said to Lisa, she's dead, he's killed her. And Lisa was like, you don't know that? I was like, yes I do. It was just an instinct. I had this gut feeling that it wasn't going to end the way we wanted it to. So at 1:45 that morning, Sunday morning, on the 16th, the phone rang, and I was still awake anyway because couldn't sleep obviously. The hospital phoned, and it was intensive care saying, you need to come back. Kirsty's took a turn for the worst. So we all got back up, went back up to the hospital. They took us into the family room, and basically it was quite solemn the way he said it, but I think that's their way of, it's their job, isn't it? They do it every day. And he basically sat us all down and said, Kirsty is going to die. She'd had a massive stroke. They took her down after we'd left and done a CT scan, and she had no brain activity at all.
She was 20%.
20%. So
brain
basically,
activity.
she would not have survived. Even if she had survived, she wouldn't have had any kind of life.
Yeah.
You know, she would have been, you know, 24-hour care, nothing. There would be nothing there, basically. So we had to sort of take that in, didn't we?
Yeah.
So that was at 1:45 in the morning. And they kept saying to me all through the night, you know, we need to turn the machine off. But I was adamant I didn't want to turn it off. It was like, I'm not turning it off.
Yeah.
You know, she's not going to die. We're having a baby.
I think you struggled with, she didn't want that. They wanted her.
I didn't want
said,
that
when
decision.
you're ready, we'll do it.
I didn't want to make that
she
decision.
didn't want to make that time and that decision.
Yeah.
That I have to turn that machine off. I didn't want to do that.
So
it
we
was
left.
like, no, I can't do it.
We stayed,
So
didn't we, for like 7
we
hours.
stayed, and they actually, not forcefully, but they actually said, like, Mrs. Hurst, we need to, you know, make a decision on how we're going to go forward now. She's not going to survive, you know. The only way the only reason she's alive now is through the machines. It's the only thing that's keeping her alive. So we all got together and we spoke, and they all made me realise that, you know, this is it, you know. You need to do it, you know.
I think it was more Dad, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was my dad that sat
We're
around
just
and said,
lingering. It's just
like,
lingering on, you know.
Yeah.
We really need to, you know, take the next step, and I agreed, you know, yes. So they turned the machine off at smack on 9 o'clock Sunday morning, and I think it 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
4 minutes for everything to
Yeah,
shut down.
and that was
So we knew, you know. So I sat there with her. So she basically died in my arms. So, you know, that's all I could really do. For Kirsty, you know. obviously being pregnant as well.
Oh, she was pregnant as
She
well
was
at the
13
time,
weeks
wasn't she?
pregnant with the second son at the time.
We knew it was a boy because
Afterwards,
due to autopsies, post-mortems and
yeah.
stuff. They
and
give us
they sort of
information.
struggled telling us, didn't they? There was like, do you really want to know? And we're like, this is the detectives that were doing the murder inquiry, and were brilliant, absolutely brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah.
A lot of support the first
From
few
the
days.
police, which
Yeah,
was-
first few
Did
days.
you know she was pregnant prior to?
We did know she was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Oh, she
knew.
already told you this?
Unfortunately, she died on the Sunday, and her first appointment with a midwife was the next day on the Monday.
First scan.
Yeah,
scan.
no, it weren't. It was
Not
just
first.
to confirm the pregnancy. We'd already done the pregnancy tests,
Yeah.
you know, like you do at home from the
Yeah.
chemist. So we'd already done that. We knew she was pregnant. We'd booked in doctors and everything because we just moved to Redditch only 7 weeks earlier, you know, into a brand new house that had just been built. So we'd just registered her into doctors. So she was due to go the next day. Unfortunately, that Monday.
She didn't know.
I've
she
still
was
got
having a
the
boy.
I've still got the letter. I've kept it,
Yeah.
you know. So after that, then obviously she passed away that morning. But what we did do was Kirsty was Catholic, so we had a priest come in about 6 o'clock that morning before she died and blessed her,
Yeah.
which was nice to see. Unfortunately, two of her grandparents, which was my dad and father's mum, refused to see her. For the simple fact is they wanted to remember her alive,
The way she
happy.
was.
They didn't want to see her in that condition. So we accepted that as a family, and we respected their, you know, that they didn't want to see her like that, because it was hard, you know. She wasn't in a good state. She had multiple wounds to her face, hands. They did cover a lot up for us, so we didn't. I mean, he did stab her 63 times. 63 times, 63 stab wounds. So they did, you know, cover a lot up for us, you know. So she didn't look. I think we was expecting
was
a lot
more-
worse than what we seen.
It was more from she'd had a massive stroke, so she'd had like more of like, you know, like it
The
was more
face, her
my dad
face
would
had gone,
never.
yeah.
I'm glad my dad.
And
didn't
I think we agreed with my dad straight away, because we knew what my dad's like. He's very sentimental. She was his first grandchild, the oldest grandchild to be born into the family. So
And that was really close. Like,
and that was
bond,
very close.
Very, very.
Because I was
close
only
bond.
17 when I got pregnant. I was 18 when I had her, and I lived with my parents for quite a while. So they had that bond with Kirsty.
And then she come back, didn't she? For various years, she'd come stay with us.
Yeah, and
for-
we
for a
lived
couple of years,
local.
and then she'd go again, and because they only lived round the corner from us
So
anyway.
it was very
she used to
local,
just
so
come
it
stay
was
all the time.
very close relationship. So yeah, that happened, and obviously then the murder inquiry started, because to start with, obviously it was only an assault charge he was arrested on, because she was still alive.
Yeah.
What had happened was, when they got to her that day, she had no heartbeat, but she had a slight pulse, and they had to work on her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They had to work on her. Sometimes, I don't know, I think maybe it would have been easier if it had all happened that day and it was just instant.
Yeah.
I know it sounds
Rather than
a
dragging
bit
it on.
harsh,
Yeah.
but for them 24 hours we spent at Queen Elizabeth Hospital thinking, you know, she's gonna at least still
She
be
went
alive,
through
even
5
if she's
hours
got,
of surgery.
even if I had to look after 24 hours a day, she's still alive. She's
So
still
what-
there,
what
and I
was
can
the,
see her.
What was the time period then from when the incident happened to when she actually passed away?
She was took in. That happened at 10:10 on the Saturday morning. She died at 9:05 on the Sunday morning, the following
that
day.
quick.
So that's how long it was. So basically nearly 24 hours. And that 24 hours was probably the most intense.
24
She'd been to a couple of different hospitals as well.
That,
hadn't
well,
she?
what had
That period
happened
of
was
Yeah.
they took her to the local hospital in Redditch.
Yeah.
When she got there, they realised the severity of the injuries. They didn't
I
have
couldn't handle.
the facilities to handle severe. So then they blue lighted her to Queen Elizabeth, and that's when I said, like, because they had to pull over so many times and resuscitate her, it took them longer to get there than what it would have, you know, because they blue lighted her.
Yeah.
And it weren't that far really, was it, from Redditch to Birmingham Queen Elizabeth.
Because of the injuries.
Yeah, because of her injuries and severity. Because unfortunately, the major stab wound was to the left side of the neck, which was a major artery.
Yeah.
And what we was told afterwards was that once that is, cut, there's no coming back from that. It's the major artery which was to her brain, so that's where she had the massive stroke. But
they tried
their hardest. They really did. I mean, she was in there for 8 hours surgery. She had major injuries to her stomach, her side, her chest, her face, her neck, her head, top of her head, because they said that he'd got her in a headlock and had stabbed her in the head. The knife had broke, and he went back and got a second knife and carried on the attack. This is only what we found out through the trial, unfortunately. We didn't know.
Told in
No. They didn't give us any details.
Because I was going to ask you this as well. This is one of the questions. Was when you got the call and you knew it was Kirsty, did anyone tell you what happened to her, or what was going through your head at that moment?
The phone call I got that day in the car was, Kirsty's been took in with multiple stab wounds. And what I done was, threw the phone to my husband and said, Andy, there's a woman on the phone saying that Kirsty's been stabbed. Honest to God, that was what it was. And I'm freaking out by this time. So Andy's picked up the phone and he's talking to the police. And that's how we found out where she was being took, because I didn't listen. Once she told me that, my head was, I just weren't. I was like, no. So Andy got all the details.
We didn't know nothing. We didn't know who, what, where, till we
I
got
think
to the hospital a lot.
I think I knew, like, the only way that could have happened to Kirsty was from someone in the home that day. And there was Kirsty, a 2-year-old son, and a 12-year-old brother, and him. So who's gonna? How is she gonna end up with multiple stab wounds apart from him?
And that incident took place in
my home.
Oh, it was in your house?
Yeah, my home. Because she lived with us, and he was staying. Well, boyfriend. She was pregnant, so he was there quite a lot.
Yeah.
Got on with him very well. Lovely lad. Honest to God, I have to say it, because I even said it at the trial. Never had an issue with him. He adored her. He adored the little...
There was no inkling?
No. If there was even not one thing. And unfortunately for us, we found out that he had a long history of violence with his ex-partner at his trial. That was the only way we found anything out about him, was through the trial. Me and Lisa decided we didn't want to go, because we didn't want to hear the details. So we was sort of told by family members that went for us. So we was given little bits and bobs, weren't we, over time.
About his history?
Everything.
From his previous relationship?
Yeah.
Was it just the one previous relationship? Or
No.
Relationship, yeah.
Yeah, relationship. But
and that was recorded in the sort of police documentations?
It was afterwards, yeah.
They read all the charges out.
They read all his charges out. He was a severe cocaine user.
Yeah.
He was, when he sniffed cocaine, he was very paranoid, thought someone was after him all the time. At one point, he jumped out of a taxi, going 60 miles an hour down the motorway, because he thought someone was in the boot of the car, trying to get him. No, we didn't know none of this until he'd killed her, so we had no inkling what was going on. He showed no violence, he showed nothing. He adored her, he done everything for her, bought her everything, adored the little one, everything they needed, he provided.
Was that his son?
No.
It wasn't his son?
No.
But
he treated him like he was,
his own.
Absolutely adored him. And this is why I think the shock was so strong, so severe, the shock was because there was nothing there to tell us something was going to happen.
So that was his child that Kirsty
she was pregnant with, yes.
Yeah.
So he not only murdered her, but he murdered his own unborn child.
Yeah.
Do you know Kirsty was pregnant?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, she was already 13 weeks. Yeah. You know. And that's what makes me think that day. Obviously, I weren't there. And, knowing my own daughter was, she would have said to him, like, you're doing this and I'm pregnant. Why, why are you doing it? Don't. you know. She did fight for her life. She had a lot of defence wounds on her hands. So we know, they did tell us, she did try and fight. She fought for her life. And also she had a 2-year-old son there and a 12-year-old brother. And I think that's probably what would have been in the front of her mind was protect them. If he does, you know, what's he going to do afterwards? If I can't, you know. Brother luckily got out of the house and went for help. And that's why the police got there so quick. But what had happened that morning was, he had actually phoned the police himself at 7 o'clock that morning after a cocaine binge and said that he thinks someone's trying to kill him and get into his house. The police arrived at the house and spoke to Kirsty, and Kirsty told them that he had been sniffing cocaine, and their response was, put him in the shower and put him to bed.
Thing is though, like if this guy, you know, is documented as him having previous whatever with his other relationship,
they should have run his name that morning.
Exactly.
They didn't.
And then warn your daughter.
Yes,
about,
exactly. Well, they could have took him
potentially
from the house, knowing his previous domestic violence.
Yeah, exactly.
If they had run his name instead of telling her, put him in the shower and put him to bed.
That's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's
This is what I mean. We was let down from day one. Kirsty was let down that day.
Yeah.
And the same police officers that come out that morning was the ones that found her. Because they was the same 2 officers that come out that morning was the 2 that responded.
And they was the first.
And when they got to the house and there was no response to the front door.
They dispatched a little ambulance because...
because they thought they was going to take him
in
as a mental health issue.
Yeah.
Because he was phoning them saying, someone's trying to kill me, someone's trying to get in and get me. And unfortunately for them 2 officers, they was the ones that was dispatched back out to the house. There was no response to the front door. And they went back round to the back of the house, and I had a conservatory that went at the back of the house. And unfortunately they seen Kirsty on the floor and had to break in with batons through the conservatory doors.
When they broke in, where was the guy?
He was standing at the sink washing his hands.
Really?
And washing the knives and putting them back in my knife block. Because that's what he took him out of.
And where was the 2-year-old at the
Sitting
time?
next to his mum.
Sitting on the floor next to his mum.
Trying to get his mum up. Covered in blood. It's a sad story. It's unbelievable. And you know what? In being 2, I know this sounds bad, but I'm glad he does not remember. Because he doesn't remember his mum. And I'm glad. Because his memory would have been that. Trying to get his mum off the floor. Telling her to get up. And unfortunately, you know, the police officers that did respond again quickly detained him. He tried to run. They had to use force with him. And the other police officer went straight to the baby and removed him from Kirsty. And at the time, obviously, they dispatched a small ambulance that you see on CTV in the trial. That ambulance man strolls into, you know, he's not rushing because he doesn't realise the scene inside, what's going on. He's thinking he's coming out to someone with mental health issues that needs to be removed from that. And you see him then run back out the door, you know, you can see that he's, and they then phoned for, you know, your major response unit.
In my view, that's a negligence.
It is. It was from the police. And unfortunately, the reason I didn't take it forward with the police was one of the police officers that ended up going to the trial actually quit his job.
Really?
Through what happened that day. He was that traumatised. He did not go back to work. And I think that's probably something he'll have to live with the rest of his life. And I wouldn't want to make that any worse for him, you know, to see that, what he's seen that day. I'm glad I didn't see it because I don't think I'd ever have got over what he's seen that day. But that was what he's seen, and unfortunately.
And for your 12-year-old son as well, what was there? That must have hit him as well.
Yeah, he had to go to counselling for quite a while afterwards. We took him to counselling. The day it happened, he'd run to a neighbour's, and luckily, the neighbour, he was actually a family court judge who sat and resided in family court. So they knew to keep him there, not not let him back to the house because he wanted to go back to try and help his sister, obviously. And because the police was already on the way because he'd already phoned them himself. He'd already phoned them himself.
Okay, right.
And then they'd phoned him as well, so they knew there was a situation going on. So they got there pretty quick then, and they didn't let Jack go back. So we was quite glad for that, that he didn't have to go back. And I weren't allowed to see Jack for a while. He had to be took and interviewed without me being there.
That's not right though. Hold on a minute.
He was allowed a family member, so they had to take my brother with him.
He was 12.
How old was your brother?
12. He was my brother was 30.
We're about 30.
Okay, right.
30,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
But they wouldn't allow me to go with him. So they got my brother to go with him to the police station to do the interview. And Jack's words were, "I'm going to tell you once and once only and don't ask me again." And he's never spoke of it since. So we did have to take him to counselling because he did bottle it up. He wouldn't speak about it.
He'd become very resentful.
Very resentful, very late, very into himself, very angry. His anger was more he couldn't help his sister, and
So he's blaming
even though
himself
he doesn't understand. I said to him, "I'm glad you couldn't help her," but he doesn't understand why I'm glad he couldn't help her, because if he'd gone back in, we don't know what. If he could have triggered him off to attack him as well, So he finds it really hard to get his head around, what happened that day, So they did interview him, and then it was like that happened in the March, and then the trial didn't even start till September, and they're telling us Jack has to be a witness, and we're like, straight away, no way is that kid at 12 going to stand up in that court and repeat
He said,
what he said.
once he said it first.
That's what he said. I'll tell you
"Don't ask me
once
again."
and don't ever ask me again.
And no one's
And
ever asked
7
him.
years later, he's never ever spoke Kirsty's name. Never ever spoke about it. He won't. If we speak about Kirsty,
he went really resentful of the whole situation.
Yeah.
If we talk about Kirsty,
he walks out the room, and he still does it up now, and he's 19 now. And if we talk about Kirsty now, he refuses to go to the cemetery. He refuses to go to any balloon releases, anniversaries, birthdays. He won't go to.
It's just like he's just blocked all
He's cut it off.
acknowledgement.
It's just something he
everything. He just tries to pretend it just never happened. She was
Yeah.
never there. That's it. And
That's it.
That's how he's coped with it.
That's so sad.
It is.
That is sad.
It is. But he's getting. We're a very strong type family, so I think we've helped him more in letting him deal with it in his own time and his own way. Yeah, we haven't pushed him, we haven't forced him to talk about that day. We allow him to. If he wants to talk about it, he can. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. If he wants to leave the room, none of us are going to say to him, "Why are you leaving?" We know why, as a family. If he wants to leave that conversation that we're having. He does talk about it sometimes. Now and then he will, mention.
Who's raising your daughter's son now?
Me.
Like you're raising your grandson now, yeah?
From the day she died.
From the day,
Yeah.
from the day.
So that was there was no other option. That obviously the authorities had to get involved, and they would have to go to his home and make sure that it's a safe home. Interview family members to make sure, obviously, what had happened to his mum, to make sure there's no more domestic
we all had
violence
to
or
go
anything
through the
going on
same.
in the home.
The whole family had to go through the same.
We all had to
thing.
go through the same.
We all had to be checked.
We all had to.
Yeah, because of
Yeah.
the nature of
Because of the nature of the murder.
what
That's
happened.
only immediate family, so
Yeah.
that's not
So,
extended, not extended family, is it?
No, not
it was just
extended.
everyone that was
No.
going to have.
And because he
contact
wanted a
with
part
everyone,
of.
yeah.
Call you mum?
Yes, he's called me mum. From the day he could talk, it's really weird. The children call me mum, and the children call Kirsty, and she's always lived with me, even when. So the children calling Kirsty, and me mum, he just assumed I was mum and Kirsty was Kirsty. So we used to call her Kirst. She didn't like it a lot, but she got used to it. She did get used to it. That she couldn't change. No matter how many times she was like, "No, that's Nan. No, that's my mum. No, that's your Nan. No, that's mum." So we had that argument for ages, but she'd laugh about it and she accepted it. She knew what it was like. We was a very close family. So.
Do you think like that what happened, the incident that happened, obviously from what you're saying is there was no inkling, you know, there was nothing, there was no sort of reports of any domestic violence, like your daughter coming to you and saying, oh, my boyfriend has done
No.
this to me.
Well, they
blah,
lived
blah,
with
blah.
me.
Yeah?
No,
So you would
nothing.
have seen it anyway.
I would have seen it.
So was that just a moment of madness then? Like, obviously it was
From what we
so-
from what we was told, he had probably enough cocaine in his system to take down a horse.
Mm,
They couldn't interview him for 48 hours
until it all sort of
until he was seen by a proper doctor, and you know he was out of his system where he could be questioned and answer without being under the influence. So yeah, he was. When the trial started, we did find out that it was a pattern with him of being very paranoid when he was taking cocaine. Unfortunately, like I said, we didn't find this out until afterwards, which was too
When it
late.
came to Kirsty, you would never have.
No,
thought.
you would not.
You never
Honest to
would.
God, you would not.
Nothing
You know, if you had lined 5
No.
men up in a line and said, which one would I want for my daughter, I would have picked him.
Yeah.
Because you would not have believed how he was with her.
And
And-
how she was.
And how
with
she
him.
was.
Mm.
You know, she was very, she was a lot like me, you know. If she didn't like something, she'd tell you. You know, she was very in your face, you know. If she didn't like you, she'd tell you she didn't like you. Simple as that. There was no, you know, thing of you. There's no holding back with Kirsty. Very like me. So I know if something was going on, I would have known.
Yeah, because I was going to say
We
that
was
as
very
well.
close.
Yeah, I was going to ask you two must have been close.
Very.
'cause
I mean, I was only
especially,
17 when I got pregnant, so I was a child myself. So we grew up, you know, we was more like sisters than
Sisters, yeah,
mum and
yeah.
daughter. We was mum and daughter, obviously, but we was like sisters a lot as well.
Yeah.
You know, first to tell me she was pregnant, you know, straight to me for anything like that. So yeah, it was, like I said, it's not the pain, it's not the anger, it's the shock that takes you off your feet.
Yeah.
And that's what it was for us, was the shock.
Yeah, I could imagine.
We
because
weren't
you-
expecting it.
Yeah, you didn't expect
You know,
anything like that.
I went to work one day and I come home to a dead child. It's just what, you know, that's blatantly how it is. You know, you can't sugarcoat it, can you?
Because
you
me
know.
and Shaka, we were talking about, you know, Claire's Law. We were talking
Yeah.
about that.
Now,
and I
you
think
see,
that-
Claire's Law,
Yeah.
her mum is, went to the House of Commons with Kirsty's case.
Oh,
She was murdered
okay.
in
I didn't know that.
Harvey Nichols at
Yeah,
work
yeah.
by her boyfriend.
Yeah, that's
He
right.
shot her dead and
Yeah.
then shot himself dead. She's a big advocate for me.
Yeah.
She's a very big supporter. I've met her on numerous times, and she's a lovely lady. She's done a lot for domestic violence. She was very unhappy with the report on Kirsty's
Absolutely,
murder.
Absolutely.
I've got the report. She actually made her own report that I've got at home. Lovely lady, very nice lady. Yeah. So yeah, she was a big backup for me. She was.
Because that, you know, effectively that failed.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, I'm
Claire's
saying
Law
that-
did fail.
Yeah, because that was
Yeah.
when 2009 or something.
Yeah,
like that?
and he shot her dead in Harvey Nichols at work
Yeah.
in front of customers, and then shot himself dead.
Yeah,
And
ridiculous.
her mum, I'm still in contact with her now. She still messages me now. You know, she was very disappointed with Kirsty's case when it went to the House of Commons, because it sort of focused her. When it went to the House of Commons, if you read the report that I got back, it was more focused on him and his ex-partner and what had happened there, rather than what happened with Kirsty. Do you know what I mean? A lot of it is to do with his past with his ex-partner, the amount of times the police were called out, the amount of times she dropped the charges, the amount of times she took him back. It was like a cycle, and like we was very, you know,
And this all came out just in the court
in the
case.
trial. It all come out in the trial, unfortunately.
Because with the court case as well, because you know with trials like this, was it over weeks this trial went, or
No, she died on the 16th of March. The trial didn't start till the 24th of September the same year. Day 3, he pled guilty. So the first 2 days, he didn't say nothing. The third day, when they started bringing up about her being pregnant, and the autopsy was brought up, the autopsy report, he went guilty. He didn't want to hear no more. So he passed his solicitor a note, and it had guilty written on it. I want to go guilty. And his solicitor handed it to the judge, and the trial was stopped then. And he convicted him of first-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 20 years, minimum 20 years, but he took a year off for pleading guilty. So it's minimum 19 years that he has to serve before he's eligible for parole. Mm-hmm. And that's depending on how he's progressing in prison, you know. From, you know, talk on the street, he's doing well. What we've been told.
Do you hold any grudges? Obviously you do.
I've got, obviously, yeah.
Do you think you would ever forgive him?
Never.
No.
Never. I don't know, to tell you the truth. 7 years down the line, no. Maybe 20 years down the line, can I say I wouldn't? I don't know. You know, my main concern is because he's 9 now, and one day he's going to ask me what happened. He knows the basics of what, he knows Kirsty died and he knows, but there's one day he's going to want to know the details, and my big scare is how it's going to affect him when he finds out. Because I can't tell him, because I wasn't at the trial, but I have got the trial on paper, and it's in a memory box for him, and if he ever does want to know, you know, it's there for him if he wants to read it.
Obviously, what happened to his mum and the age he was at the time, you know, friends that he has growing up, they're not going to know anything.
No.
Right? So no one's going to really bring that up.
Obviously, when he started school, and everything, we had to tell the teachers the situation, because obviously I'm his guardian, I'm not his parent, so that's down on his record. So they had to know, obviously, and it's confidential, so they're not allowed to tell anyone. So doesn't class Kirsty as his mum, he classes me. So when he talks about his mum, he talks about me, not Kirsty, because he was so young, you know. But one day he might want to know, you know, what happened to her, and it's a day we're going to have to, you know, prepare ourselves for, because we don't know how he's going to react. Is he going to be angry? Is it going to bother him? Is it not? We don't know how he's going to feel in 10, 15 years' time when he wants to know. He might not want to know, though, because I've always been his mum.
You've always been his mum, yeah.
There you go. Kirsty, to him, Kirsty's a picture on the wall now.
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't remember her. But I have got a memory box with everything, you know, from when he was a baby, all the pictures. And that'll be there for him if he ever wants it. You know, I'm not going to force it on him. If he wants it, it's up to him.
Do you think it should be more than just sort of the police to intervene in these sort of type of situations? There should be organisations out there.
He was under his doctors for mental health.
Okay, right.
His parents knew as well, mental health issues. There was a lot of people, prison. He'd been in prison previously.
Right, okay, right.
So they all knew.
So he'd been in prison for, I don't know, domestic
Not
violence,
domestic violence.
Oh,
It was
okay,
there was other charges, drug charges, distribution of drugs, taking drugs.
Yeah.
He had a long history with the police. And like I said, if Dad had just run his name that morning, instead of telling us to put him in the shower and put him to bed, we probably wouldn't be we wouldn't be sitting here now. It'd have been a completely different story. We would be, you know. He'd have a brother, you know, and he'd probably have a normal, stable life like every other child does. So it's, you know, there's a lot of ifs in there. There's a lot of ifs and buts, you know, and
there's always ifs and buts when something like this happens, and you don't know who to sort of.
Yeah, we had a lot. We had a lot of finger pointing, didn't we? You know, his family knew, his ex-partner knew, the police knew, his doctors knew, the mental health knew. They all knew he had issues apart from us. And we had to find out through his trial when he was being tried for the murder of his partner.
I think we realised it wasn't just Kirsty that had been found. He'd been found obviously from previous not being given the help he needed.
Yeah, he was let down.
Then let Kirsty down because
he was let down.
If he'd have got the help, it wouldn't have been.
It wouldn't have come to the situation.
No. So it was like a lot of people was let down.
Yeah.
And then that meant
Kirsty was ultimately paid the price of them letting him being let down. She paid the price, didn't she? And so did the baby that she was carrying. So, and so did me, unfortunately, losing a child. And a child losing its mother, you know, and Kirsty losing her life, and a baby not being able to be born and have a life. So yeah, I think when you said like forgiveness, I wouldn't say forgiveness, but I will say that he was let down, definitely. He was let down by a lot of people, which could have prevented what happened to Kirsty. So you do feel let down by a lot of people.
Do you think from Kirsty to where we are now, do you think anything's changed?
No, no. It's getting worse, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it is. I mean, you know what, to tell you the truth, I'd say this last year in the pandemic, hasn't it? A lot of people have been isolated and a lot more domestic violence is going to go on because we know this, you know, because they're isolated and everything. But to say from when Kirsty died up to when the pandemic, is anything changed? No. You said about Claire's law, that didn't do no...
And
her mum fought very hard to get where she actually got the law passed in Parliament, Claire's law, and it's still done no good.
Because I know just the other day, I think it's a couple of months ago, there was that a young lady from London, a young woman in London, who was murdered by.
She was kidnapped by the police officer, raped and murdered. Yeah. So you know, that is that's a very unusual case because he didn't know her, did he?
No.
And if you look at the statistics, most women that are murdered by a partner or ex-partner. And the worst time for them to be murdered is when they try and break away from that relationship. So if you do look into it, most women are murdered by partners or ex-partners or someone they've been involved with.
But why do you think, I don't know, like, you know, the women that they've gone through or they've sort of endured, I don't know, months of physical abuse or mental abuse from their partner, even men, like from the women.
It's not just women, it's men as well.
Men as well, but both sides. You know, what would you say is the reason why they
don't break away?
Yeah, continuously going. Is it love? Is it gifts?
Maybe lack of support
from the family or from?
I think it's lack of support. They have nowhere to go. Where do you go? If you've got 3 children in an abusive relationship and that's your home, and you know he's not going to leave it, where do you go with your 3 children?
Family members.
And what if you haven't got that family support?
The police, but I know people are intimidated by going to the police because eventually that will.
But Kirsty's case shows you, their police were called out that day. They didn't do anything.
Yeah.
They told her to shower him and put him to bed.
Yeah.
She ended up dying. So there is not enough support for domestic violence. You know, there's that one called Shelter, Give Me Shelter. They use Kirsty a lot in their promotion. It hasn't got the funding it needs. The funding is a big major issue because these groups are not funded by government. You know, they're funded by public. You know, public giving donations. You know, so I think maybe, you know, the support is a big issue.
And I think the people that are funding are people that have experienced it themselves, or they have a family member.
And I think with a lot of people as well, it's probably embarrassment as well. You don't want people to know that you're in an abusive relationship because they're going to say to you, well, why don't you leave? What, you know, if you're not in that situation, you can't really comment on what it's like behind closed. We all say, don't we? You don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Some people can hide it better than others. You know, some abusers don't leave marks, and some abusers are mental and verbal. It's not always physical, you know. So it's trying to get these people to like see that there is support out there, there is help, but without that help being put out there, they don't know where to go. You know, there's a lot could be done. And like I said, it's not just women, it's men. Men have a lot of domestic violence, and men are the worst to hold it back and hide it. And don't want their friends to know you're being beat by your girl. You know what I mean? You know, it is that kind of thing as well. So I think promoting, you know, I don't know, is it, you know, believing in yourself, that you know,
I think talking
can be a lot issue as well. Yeah,
if you
do not have that support group. A lot of people don't want to go to family members because family members will turn around and say, well, you need to leave them. You know, that's what a family. You know, if she come to me and said I'm being abused, I'm saying like, you get out that door now. You know, you come to my house, and that. It's easy to say it, but it's not easy to do it when you're in that situation without the support.
Because you don't know what you're losing, do you?
You don't. You don't. You know, that's familiar to them. That life is familiar to them. And for them to break away is going to be a big, major issue.
Oh, yeah.
Big,
especially when there's kids.
Financially as well. When you've got children, you know, where do you go? How are you going to, especially if that partner's financially supporting you, where do you go? You know, who do you ask for help? And I think that's what needs to be really be pushed is, we're there for you. we know there's organisations there, but they're not really in the limelight, you know. They'd rather talk about, you know, Prince Harry and Meghan having a new baby rather than domestic violence that has gone up 100% since lockdown.
Yeah.
You know, where is this support? Where is this?
There are charities out there.
There is, but like I said,
don't know if
they're
it's
not financially
confidential.
supported,
Yeah,
and they have to sort of get the funds themselves. And a lot of people in this last year are losing jobs, are on furlough, and can't afford to give to charity anymore. So their charities are actually suffering as well. You know, which what can you do if you haven't got the funds to promote? You know, we're here for you. We have no shelters for women and children, or men and children to go to, somewhere safe, somewhere they know they're going to get a hot meal and a roof over their head. Because that's a lot of things, that's a big issue for people to get away from, is where am I going to go? Is my child going to have a meal tomorrow? You know, especially if they're financially supported by that person that they're living with. So, you know, where do you take it forward from there? That is going to be one of the major things, is we need to really push. Domestic violence is so high, but a lot of people hide it, don't they? They do hide it.
It's true.
So, you know.
I think it's more to the shame of it.
It is, of course it is. You don't want to tell your friends that you're being abused, do you? Because your friends are going to say, go on, get out. It's not that easy.
What message would you give to women who are currently sort of in this sort of situation? I know, because obviously Kirsty, there was no inkling or anything like that, but for women that are actually going through, you know,
the same
physical, mental abuse,
domestic violence,
and stuff like that, like what
men and women.
Men and women.
I mean, obviously, your police are the first that you think would be
but
the ones to help you, because
yeah.
that's what the promotion is.
Yeah.
You phone the police, they come and help you.
Yeah.
Talk
in any
to
situation.
They need to just talk. Speak to somebody who they trust.
I think communication as well is a big issue. Communication. You have a lot of women that will drop the charges, and luckily now police will push forward, even if you drop charges now after so many times, we'll go forward with the charges.
Yeah, to see why.
But I think it needs to be a bit more, instead of 6-7 times of calling them out, it needs to be 1 or 2.
Oh yeah.
And if children are involved, it needs to be straight away. You either remove yourself from that, we will help you from that situation, or we'll take the children from that situation. If you choose to stay there, that's your choice. You're an adult, you can stay, but we will remove your children. And for a lot of women, that's scary.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose the children.
I think as well that, you know, to sort of play devil's advocate, you know, there's a lot of relationships out there, men and women, and they will make false claims.
Oh yeah.
And the police don't know what's true and what's actually not true.
Women can, you know, custody battles, women will use violence, and it's not even been there.
It's not true,
And a judge is more likely to believe the woman than the man. Which is wrong, you know, because you've had that before, when the one who dressed as Spider-Man and climbed up the House of Parliament. Father's rights.
Yeah, I remember.
And they should have just as many rights as the women should.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but they should. They're their children as well. They produce them children. They made them. You know, and women, it is, But how can you get around that?
It's a good question.
Hey?
It's true.
And this is not down to us, this is down to the police, isn't it? And the government. They need more funding. Definitely more funding for domestic violence. A lot more shelters, safe houses, somewhere you can go. Have counselling. Let you know, someone to tell you that this is not the life you have to lead. There's a life out there without violence. There's a life you can lead with your children that's normal. Getting up every day and going to school without having to worry and coming home to violence. This is what needs to be promoted. A lot more funding, definitely, from the government.
Yeah, that's the main thing. Really.
Yeah.
I think they do. They need to support. You know, the help needs the support.
Oh, definitely. And it's all down to funding, really. It's down to money, isn't it? You know, money makes the world go round. It's money that we need to have put in to these kind of things. Definitely.
Because there are people out there that actually do want to help.
There's people out there that are genuinely going through it.
To actually
and there's those out there that are genuinely going through it that actually need the help, and the help is not there because, like you said, false accusations, you know, not enough funds being put in. And there is genuinely so many people out there that need the help. And it's just not there for them. It's not there.
So what I was going to ask is, to both of you, is as a family, how have you moved on as a family then?
It's brought us closer.
Yeah, definitely.
It's made us stronger. You know, I think with us, our dad, you know, he's our main, you know, he's the head of our family because he always has been. Because he's a brilliant dad, give us a brilliant life, brilliant childhood, and watching him struggle the way he did with Kirsty's death.
I think it gave us more of a
More
reason
incentive to
push him through it.
Yeah.
It was as if
Even
we've
though
sort of
she was
carried
my
dad.
child, we was more focused on my dad because I think as a man as well, not being able to be that protector, you know, and not being able to, you know, and I think with me as well, you know, not being able to help me through my grief because he can't. It's my grief. I've got to get through it the way I can, my own pace, the way I get through it myself. And I think because he couldn't help me with that grief, really hurt him. You know, he's up that cemetery every week with me, Joe. He's lovely, text him every week, and he's there tending to her grave. And you know, there's not a week goes past he's not up there. You know, and I think my dad gave us that push, didn't he?
And then the kids.
I think if we had collapsed, he would have collapsed with us. I think we was his structure, we was the ones holding him up, and I think we've got him through it. And I can say as a family we are strong, and I think my dad's really proud of us how we've got through it. I think we've,
Fair play, man.
That's good, that is.
It is.
You need that. That's, you know, everything you've been through.
Like I said, he's been a really good dad. You know, we've never had to ask for nothing, have we?
People say, don't they, how do you do it? But when you're in a situation and you're not given a choice, you have to
don't
look
give a
around.
choice.
Yeah.
And when your dad's literally crumbled, you know that that's your time. You've got to stand up, and that's how
we've got to now support him, like he supported us over all them years. Even when I got pregnant at 17, and he still, you know, I still lived with him, and he still gave me a home and a roof, and give Kirsty a lovely upbringing from birth. You know, they was right there with me from day one. It's like, right, now it's our turn. You've supported us all these years, now we're going to hold you up, you know. We're going to be your bridge.
We've got a
Not
lot of
the
kids
other way.
in the family as well.
Oh yeah,
so
oh God, too many kids in the family.
There's a lot of kids, so...
We have a big family, which I think helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
There's
then?
4 of us, with me, Lisa, sister and brother. Grandkids, oh no, you're asking.
My mum's got 16 grandkids.
16 grandkids.
And 4 great-grandchildren and
And
one on the way due in a couple of weeks. So it'd be 5 great-grandchildren, 16 grandchildren.
And a lot of them have been born since Kirsty died,
Really?
which I think has helped. That new life coming into the family has
That's what they say,
helped.
though, one life gone and another one's born. isn't it?
Oh yeah,
That's what they say.
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like with you going through the case.
We didn't have a lot of media attention. What a media did come out was we weren't told about it. It was just printed, wasn't it?
There was things printed that wasn't the right things,
The right-
ages and stuff, because nobody had asked us anything.
They asked for no information.
They just printed off stuff.
Yeah.
On social media.
Yeah,
A lot of
the
it
picture
was.
originally that they used on the news
Was actually a profile picture.
on
When she died, it's still up now, obviously, because Facebook and now is remembering Kirsty rather than her being obviously active because it's 7 years later. And they just decided to take, you know, the picture off there. And if they'd just come to us, you know, we would have happily, you know, have given the information and made sure it got out there right, you know, and the pictures.
I don't think anything of Kirsty herself was...
No, it was not...
There was nothing
it
about
was more,
her,
it was all about him. You know, Kirsty was, you know, a lot of it was to do with his past and him, rather than about Kirsty and what had happened at that time.
This is why when they used her picture for the
just
shelter,
give me shelter,
we
it was
wasn't
very
happy with it
heartbreaking.
because it was a completely different story to
What happened?
what happened to Kirsty. She wasn't domestically...
She wasn't
in a
domestic
abuse relationship.
She wasn't.
But they used her picture and
They're still
her
using
story,
it now.
and it seems as if they then employed that it was something it
The thing
wasn't.
is, though, it's not like a normal case, is it? It's not. It's a unique case, especially the amount of time she was stabbed.
Yeah.
Like 63
Well,
times.
they called it a frenzied attack. The judge did. So they called it a frenzied attack.
Dog attack. A frenzied attack.
It's like a dog attacking a child,
Yeah.
isn't it? And if a dog's put down for attacking a child, you know, why can't it be? That's what I think.
Because you said before, did you say before that your dad seen an article in the paper?
Yeah, so he'd gone to work and he had bought some paper, and he was sitting down for his dinner, and he started opening the paper on page 4. He's opened it, and yeah, there's Kirsty, big picture of Kirsty on her own. And then you had loads of pictures of other women that had been murdered by partners around her. And it just had in big letters, you know, Kirsty 21, pregnant, 21, stabbed 63 times by partner. It was horrendous. It was just like...
I think it
My
was
dad
more
had to
shock
phone
because nobody
you,
had
didn't
been asked or told that
They
it was
didn't
going
give
to
you a
get
heads
out.
up, you know.
My dad was just sitting at work, just gone back to work as well after having so long off.
Because they'd give him leave.
And it was more like he was just sitting there, just about to have his lunch, and then that's it. His granddaughter
And he phoned
was just
you,
staring.
didn't he? And you
yeah,
phoned me?
he phoned me.
And she
really
phoned me and she was
upset.
like, because I have the paper every day because I love my paper, and she's like, have you got the paper today, Sharon? I was like, no, why? She said, well, just to let you know, there's an article about Kirsty in it.
My dad
said,
phoned me and he wanted,
Yeah,
he
he
said,
told
did
her.
you know? And I said, no, like, because...
And we're like, what? So I've run down to the shop.
No, and if they would have got the right information.
They would have got the right information and the right story. And it might have got out there a bit better. You know, it could have made a bit more impact if they'd got the right story. But they didn't. They chose to... But it's the press, isn't it? You know, if they can't find the information, they'll make it up. Won't they? You know,
and there's nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do.
They
We had
can
no
say-
rights. We looked into it.
want,
We had no rights. You know, the information they got was from what had ever come from the trial. The pictures were on an open Facebook, so there's nothing we could have done.
They didn't even approach you to get the right information.
No, no.
Trying to say that, you know, if there's any person sort of going through this at the moment, then, you know, we're the Kaps off team. We want to show support. If there's anything that we can do, just to give, those potential victims a voice, then please, you know, get in contact with us because that's what we're here for. And you know, thank you to our guests here for showing.
Welcome.
Thanks for
It's
having
nice
us.
to get it out there. It's nice to actually have someone to listen for a change.
Yeah, man, that's what we do. That's what we're here for. You know, we want people to, you know, watch this and, you know, take some sort of light from it and understand that they're not alone. You know what I mean?
Not on your own.
And you can, you know, there is a, you know, we talk about the police and, you know, this, that, and the third, but
even if you can have
there
one
is-
person.
yeah, tell one person, that person tell another person, and eventually everyone.
But
can
even
come
you
together
with
and
this
try and-
podcast, if you can have
Yeah.
one person to break away from that
that's-
cycle,
yeah.
then you've done
One-
something good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah,
But you see, your hands are tied. You need the funding.
yeah,
That's it.
I know.
If you had the funding, you could really put it out there.
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah,
in something
100%.
like this, because a lot of people watch it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
And I'll be definitely tagging you in it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
man. Thank you very much.
Tagging that.
Yeah.
Tag.
On that note as well, if there is any organisations out there and you feel that you need to talk to anyone, you can contact any organisation.
Yeah,
at any
refuge. Refuge, is it Refuge?
Yeah, Refuge,
Bernardo's, you know, all
Give
those
Me Shelter.
organisations.
Give Me
Shelter,
Is a good one.
yeah.
So please do contact them, and I hope all of you who have heard this story today, I hope all of you can take a part of it and just feel the pain that the family's gone through, because it is a very hard thing to go through. And as I say, you don't feel no one's pain until you be in their shoes. So yeah. So thank you on behalf of all of us.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
So, you know, I just want to thank everybody, you know, our guests for sharing the story. You know, emotional roller coaster, it's touched everybody, it's touched all our hearts, Shaka included as well, people behind the scenes. But I just want to pay attention also to the candle that was also donated to us, Fruit Candles, I think that's the correct name. Yes, it is the correct name, by Lux. It's a beautiful piece, as you can see. It's all handcrafted. This particular candle is not a lotion that you can also use. However, they do have a variety of ranges that you can use once it's melted down as a lotion. As I said, it's all natural ingredients.
Sometimes at a late night you might get thirsty, you know, especially these hot summer nights coming through. With a drink to quench your thirst, Tea's Kitchen. quench your thirst at any time. Many different flavours. You get 4 different types. You get 2 for a £5, or we can come to some agreement. But it quenches your thirst. Tea's Kitchen.
Also, big up to Shambhala Damo Productions, who actually produced these 2 chains, me and my fellow host, Shaka as well. Just want to promote that, and also the t-shirt my host is wearing, flexing his biceps also at the same time. Young Tailors, as you can see there, so please get in contact with us if you wish to purchase any of these items which I've mentioned. But besides that, the most important message we're trying to sort of give to you guys is that, if anybody is going through any type of
Domestic violence.
Yeah, domestic violence, any sort of physical, mental abuse, and want to get in touch with us to share a story, or just talk to us in confidence, then hit us up on the email, which is touching back on that, sorry. So anything which you've seen, anything which you've heard, then please contact the Kaps Off team, which via email, of course.
It's at the bottom of the screen.
It's at the bottom of the screen, or if you're visually impaired, then it's capsoff podcast at gmail.com. Okay, capsoffpodcast@gmail.com. To be continued next time.
And on that note, till next time, goodbye from Kaps Off Podcast.
So yeah, thank you for coming on. Show our appreciation for you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, lovely.